You are watching Ukrainian television network Contact. Today with us is Valentina Kuryliw, educator, director of education of the Holodomor Research and Education Consortium at the Canadian Institute of the Ukrainian Studies in Alberta, head of the National Holodomor Committee with Ukrainian Canadian Congress. Valentina Kuryliw served as the department head of History and Social Sciences for the Toronto District School Board, and Valentina has been a teacher with over 35 years of teaching experience. Valentina Kuryliw was also instrumental in implementing Holodomor studies with a Canadian curriculum school system. Pani Valentino, very nice to have you with us. Tell us, please, why is it important to teach students about the genocide?
There are too many examples of human rights abuses, and there are ongoing examples of genocide. And so rather than thinking that we are stopping the process, we're seeing that there are a lot of minor conflicts where this is occurring. And Canada has been in the foreground of teaching about genocide and human rights abuses for the last 30 years. They even have genocide courses in some of the bigger cities and some of the bigger provinces. And I think it's important to teach students so they can identify when something like that is happening. And it's very important that they feel an empathy for the people and the fact that you cannot, in a democracy, sit and be passive. You have to do something if you think something is wrong. And I think we have to teach our children to do that. And there is a process in how a genocide occurs. And by teaching these various examples, we can do some good. And this is something for lifelong learning.
Mm-hmm. At what age, what student age is appropriate to learn about such tragic historical events?
I believe that you can do it even starting in kindergarten through the use of stories with animals, with various groups. There are more and more historical fiction that is coming out, whether it's for the young, let's say grade 5 and 6, stories of children being caught in a situation like the Holodomor, or even younger. And so that could be done. The work that I'm going to be talking about today is for high school students, where we can use a variety of different type of approaches.
And this brings us to my next question. So you designed a special lesson template for teachers, how to teach about genocide, where you call on teachers to teach students to apply critical thinking. Tell us, please, about this lesson and components of that lesson.
Well, it's very important to teach about critical thinking skills, and any lesson that you're going to be preparing for students nowadays in our, in the 21st century, it has to have critical and historical thinking activities where students will learn to analyze, synthesize, and even teach their fellow classmates as to what they learn. And so what I've done in this lesson, I call it an introductory lesson. And it has been very popular in Canada and also in Ukraine. I've been teaching this lesson since 2016 in Ukraine. And I've also published a book in 2021 in Ukrainian, which is the same lesson that I just published in the English language. We start out by looking at what are human rights, what is genocide. We look at the convention. We look at what Raphael Lemkin, the father of genocide, said about genocide and about the Ukrainian genocide, the Holodomor as well, show a short video to give a background scenario as to what was happening in Ukraine at that time. And then the second part of it could be a second lesson or just a longer lesson in itself. I divide the class into 6 groups. And each group has a different type of, I call them artifacts, since you're going to be like a detective or like a historian, that you will be looking at the kind of things. What would you learn from the materials that you have before you? And so each of these materials then has an assignment sheet that they have to find information that they will then present to the rest of the class. So the kind of archives that I have are the official government documents, for example. What were some of the rules that were passed by Stalin in order to create the Holodomor? a newspaper article about the fact that there are two different viewpoints. It occurred and it did not occur, like Durante saying that there was no such famine and no such genocide. And then Muggeridge talking about the fact of what he had seen, or Mr. Jones, for example. And then we also use photographs, a completely different type of resource, but very, very important as well. You can learn a lot by just looking at photographs. And so the kids have to do that. Letters as well. Ordinary farmers writing to Stalin, they didn't believe that he knew what was going on. You know, things like that. The Italian consul in Kharkiv writing a letter about what he has seen on the streets of Kharkiv and people dying, things like that. And of course, survivor accounts, very important as well. And we had quite a few of them in Canada, and we have an organization, the UCRDC Documentation Center, had interviews with these people, most of whom have passed, but they left their stories with us so that we have witness accounts as well. So that's very important. And then when they teach each other, they can see the whole picture as to what happened with the government, what did the government do, what were people seeing, what was happening, how was it happening, and they teach each other. And as an introductory lesson, it lends for further study in all kinds of ways.
In the month of November, as we commemorate victims of Holodomor, the PDF and also PowerPoint of your lesson is available for free download. Please tell us where the educators and anyone who's interested can find it and download it.
Well, recently I had a request from the Ministry of Education of Ukraine to allow them to put my Майстерня Історика, the Ukrainian version, which came out in 2021, onto a website where every teacher that is interested in the Holodomor can have access to it free of charge. And they could also get a copy of the book if they call a certain number, and they will send them to it.
What about the English version?
The English version, it took me a longer time. I wasn't sure I was going to do it, but now I'm thinking of the French one as well, because obviously I think it's needed. And so the English version has come out as well. It came out in March of 2024, this year. And we are putting it on our website, which is available for the World Congress of Ukrainians. There's going to have access to that. And also we're going to have, we're also putting it out for, with the World Congress, it's going to be available for teachers and for students right across globally, because it's going to be available on our website, but they will be able to have it in PDF to download. And we also have, in English, we have my PowerPoint is there as well for teachers, so that all the teachers have to do is read the instructions and be able to teach it. And this is going to be only available during November. And if teachers want a copy of the book, we'll be happy to send them a copy.
And there are many more material on your REC website, Holodomor Research and Education Consortium, where it's always open and it's all year round. If the teachers or educators or anyone who's interested to get more information.
That's right. We have a lot of resource materials. This is an introductory lesson, but there are lots and lots of others. And of course, I wrote another book, which is 308 pages, called Holodomor in Ukraine, the Genocidal Famine, quite a few years ago. It came out in 2018, which is also available, with all kinds of activities for teachers as well.
Wow. And you made it your life mission to implement this Holodomor topic into Canadian schools curriculum. Why is that?
My parents lived through it. And as a child, I was born in a refugee camp in Germany after the war. And I knew about it because my mother always talked. I was a terrible eater. So, of course, you know, I didn't finish my food. And I was told in no uncertain terms that you don't do this kind of stuff. Because look what we had to live through. So I knew that all the way through. And because my parents, they spoke about it with their friends, but they wouldn't tell me much about it. And I used to sit under the table and listen to when my father talked to our a sort of a grandfather, an older gentleman, about the Holodomor. And I needed to know. So I wanted to study history. And I became a history teacher. I wanted to know more. And I wasn't getting the answers, but I knew it from people's accounts. And so that put on the spur that I know how to teach. I have the methodology that is required nowadays. I know what to do and how to do it. And that as I'm retiring, I should do something about this. And so that started about, I did something in the 1980s, in the 1990s when I was still teaching. But later on, it became a task after 2007. You know, we set up a committee with the Toronto Ukrainian Canadian Congress, and later we set up a committee with the National Holodomor Education Committee as well. So that I've tried to connect all the provinces. I've helped them with the resources. Each province is different. And most of the provinces in Canada already have it in their curriculum to a lesser or a greater degree. And in Ontario, of course, it's mandated, as it is in Saskatchewan and a few other provinces already as well. So that is good. And mandating means that they have to teach it now. And recently, we had the pleasure of being invited to be consultants. I am a consultant to the Ontario Ministry of Education on the Holodomor.
Science says about national memory, the tragic events in the nation and somehow affect also future generations. So how do you think Holodomor is affecting generations of Ukrainians in Ukraine and abroad? And also, how do you see the studies on genocide develop in the future?
Well, I think there's been quite a bit of work done, not necessarily with Holodomor itself. I think they're starting to do that in Ukraine as to second and third generations. I myself feel that I have been affected by it. There were 3 of us in the family, and out of the 3 children, I'm the eldest. I feel I have been affected by it more than my sister or my brother. But they were also affected by it. And I always felt that somehow, like my husband's family came from a different part of Ukraine. They came from Western Ukraine. They didn't know anything about it. And even the way they behave in certain ways is different from my behavior, like to ordinary things. And even the way the people I grew up with were all Eastern Ukrainians who had lived through the Holodomor. And when I met others, like my husband's family or their friends, I said to myself, it's a completely different history, completely different. You know, so I think there is a definite influence, and I think that more work has to be done on that. And of course, I think the topic of genocide is going to be very, very important. We have to deal with human rights. We have to teach our children that there has to have empathy for a human life. Life is important. And that with the values that we are teaching them about democracy, we have to continue doing that and make them realize that they have to defend democracies. Democracy it's not something that's going to happen by itself by ignoring the situation that's going on around us. We see all the wars that are going on, including the war against Ukraine by Vladimir Putin and his Russian cohorts.
Yes, and the genocide which is happening right now.
Right now, exactly. And you can use the UN Convention and you can show that the same things are happening. It's like almost a repetition of trying to wipe out the Ukrainian identity. Exactly.
Well, Pani Valentino, thank you very much for very interesting and insightful information, and we wish you all the best in your important work.
Thank you very much for having me.